I break the rules.
Art, I had a related question to you. Sort of, it's similar, kind of related to what you were talking about. Because in Rose's system, and I've heard you say it a lot of times, is highlighted, being your own authority.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I always felt it was, that always kind of rang true to me. But also, it sort of felt like a contradiction because we come to spiritual teachers because we see that they have wisdom or insights that
Yeah.
we don't have. And like, if we're a bunch of ignoramuses and we don't know anything for sure, like you were referencing before, how could we be an authority?
So with my mentality, and I assume this isn't everybody's mentality, but it's probably a fairly common one, I basically tried to agree my way to truth. And so I'd read a book, or I'd listen to Rose or whatever, whatever the authority figures were for me. And first of all, I was trying to understand my way to truth. So I was using my analytical processes to try to get my arms around the truth. And also I was agreeing with what sounded good and disagreeing with what didn't sound good. So, and the whole thing was, it's sort of like a sleepy way to try to get there, as opposed to actually studying our own mind. And so all the psychology that we hear when people talk about the studies that go on, those are all really interesting, but you can't get to the mind from outside. You have to get there from inside. Oh, and that was also another thing in that first meeting I had with Rose that really flabbergasted me, was when he said the answers, what you're looking for, everything is within. And I'd spent those years in the identity crises I'd have scanning the horizon. It didn't dawn on me there was an entirely different direction to look in, which is inside.
Well, that reminds me of, I think it's in Direct Mind Experience. It's basically a transcript of a talk that Rose gave, and he said one of the main questions he said is, how do you go within if you don't know where within is?
Yeah, exactly. That became my koan for 25 years. How do you go within? Yeah, because so I had also become familiar with Douglas Harding the last couple of years before my breakthrough, and I started doing his experiments, and he did some of his experiments with me, and it made great sense to me that you have to try to look back at what you're looking out from. Rose used to talk about it as you have to go back through the projector to retraverse the ray of creation to get home, to get to find the truth of what you really are. And what was I going to say about that? I don't know. Something.
What I'm trying to remember what Benji.
Yeah.
What did you say, Benji? What was the question you asked?
Well, I was just
where within is.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I could give you some descriptions now of like stepping stones that I experienced that I thought were going within. And basically, and so Rose drew a diagram called Jacob's Ladder, which you might be familiar with. And it was based on the dream in, I guess it's the Genesis book in the Bible, where Jacob was on a trip and he was out in the middle of nowhere one night, and he went to sleep using a stone as his pillow or whatever. And he had a dream. And in the dream, there was a ladder that was set on the earth and reaching all the way to heaven. And there were angels of God ascending and descending the ladder. So this Jacob's diagram that Rose drew was a set of 3 triangles stepped on top of each other. And the baseline of any one of the triangles is some opposition between plus and minus, up and down, back and forth, And the first one is negative and positive emotions. And it's like when we start off, we're lost on this pendulum swing between positive feelings and negative feelings. And it's a revelation when something happens which seems accidental. I don't know where buttons are to make this stuff happen, but all of a sudden you get to a point where you're watching that from a superior point of view, the top of that triangle, you're actually watching negative emotions and positive emotions. And once that happens, you're never really lost in that swamp again. So to me, that's the first major step in going within. And then in using Rose's diagram as a model, there are only 2 more jumps like that. And so in retrospect, I have a feeling about, but basically when you're watching the mind and you're looking, you don't have any idea where you are at any time. It's always by comparison. So by comparison, you can say, oh, 10 years ago, I was completely lost in thoughts. And now I'm aware of thoughts, that kind of thing. You can get a comparison, but you don't really know where you are in terms of finding or becoming the truth.
Another part of Rose's system that he talked about was the threefold path.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a lot of threefold paths. There's the way, the truth, and the life, I guess, is from Christianity, and the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha in Buddhism. And on your website, you talk about Rose's threefold path as a self-checking device, which is something I don't really hear a lot of spiritual systems talking about. What is a self-checking device? Why does a seeker need a self-checking device? What's the value of that?
Yeah, so one of the Rose's threefold path is a matrix. You could say like 9 blocks, 3 across and 3 down. And one of them has to do with physicality, one with mentality, and one with spirituality, let's say. And so typically we're not balanced in where we're putting our heartbeats, what we're looking into, how much perspective we have and whatever. And so Rose, in a fairly concise set of descriptions, gives an idea of, like in the physical sense, the label he used was getting the house in order. And so you can, if you want to check once a year to see how you're doing along those 3 lines, mental, physical, and spiritual, and then what were the other ones? You can ask yourself questions. Well, now, how am I doing along this line? How am I doing along this line? And get an idea maybe of where you'd like to put more attention to. So one of the things that I always try to pressure people into, or asking, well, what can I do, is find somebody else to help. And so that's one of the things on the list of finding people to work with. And it's not just peers, but also finding people who are what Rose used to call the rungs of the ladder that we're on, finding a few people who are on the a lower rung of the ladder from where we are. And probably what we're talking about is we've climbed up a rung. So we remember what it's like being on that lower rung. And those people, we can see things they haven't yet seen, so we can be helpful.
And what do you think, being helpful means in this context? And I just actually want to read a quote of yours for that question.
Yeah.
Illusions, delusions, or faulty beliefs prevent us from seeing clearly and acknowledging what we truly are, beyond personality and even beyond individuality. So how do we be helpful to one another with regards to that?
Well, I think it comes down to 2 things: being honest with ourselves and others, and sharing our convictions without trying to preach or sell them. So, for example, when I started going to the meetings of the Zen group in Columbus, people would talk about watching their thoughts. And so I'd heard that term, but it didn't really mean anything to me. And one night when I was leaving, I found myself stopped outside the door watching my mind. And what the words that came to me were, I'm actually watching thoughts as they're happening. I heard that was possible, but I didn't know it was. And so those are the kinds of things that accidentally happen from working with other people also.
And then when
And
you
so
said,
at that point, I guess the thing I was trying to tie that back to was, so now I have a conviction of something that I didn't have a conviction of prior to that. So now there's something that I can talk to another person about, saying, you know, I never knew it was possible. I'd heard it was, but I never knew it was possible to actually watch thoughts when they were happening. And so, and to me, that's a big step for any seeker, and something that would be very helpful for anybody to stumble into, or however that happens.